Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Act Like a Man podcast. Again, this is your host, Dennis, and with me, I have a very special guest for our episode today. He's the men's pastor at Bethel World Outreach Church. He's also an international certified life coach with John Maxwell, and he works as a coach with Stephen Mansfield, that great man. So let's all welcome my good friend, Mr. James Thomas McCraw, or JT. Hello, JT. How are you?
Good, Dennis. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's been a long time. Haven't seen you. How are you doing there in the States?
You know, I guess we're all doing lockdown together around the globe. We have something in common.
Yep. All right. I met JT during the time he went to Manila to do a men's conference with Stephen Mansfield, and the conversation I had with my brother here has really imparted a lot of things to me. Me and my wife Tammy really appreciate the times that we had, especially when we had that long conversation in the car. You really ministered to us, JT, and then that's why I wanted you to guest here, because I want you to impart some things to our listeners of Act Like a Man. And for today's episode, we're going to talk about something that's very close to our hearts, since you lead the men's ministry in Nashville and is a life coach among many men. Today, we're going to talk about building your band of brothers, or accountability as men, right? And let me just start off with a question, JT. You know, there's a lot of misconception that the more we can do things on our own. If I'm a self-made man, I'm perceived to be stronger. And I think looking at your ministry and how you do life, it's quite the opposite. Maybe share something about that, on why we need to have accountability and other men around us, and we can't do this on our own.
Well, Dennis, first of all, thank you for those kind words. It's very mutual, by the way, and that's part of building your band. That's part of a band of brothers. It's not just one-sided. It's everybody helping, each person in your group. Yeah, there is definitely a misconception. The more individualistic you are, the more of a man you are, and like you said, the opposite is actually true. And accountability has kind of a negative kind of. People think that, why do you have to be accountable? Can't you do it on your own? Don't you have the willpower to do it on your own? But I define accountability as giving someone permission, or giving another man permission to save me from myself. And that puts it in a frame of, I actually need it, because I'm just dumb enough to hurt myself. Left alone, I can really do some self-damage. So I need men around me. It actually makes me stronger. It makes me wiser. It gives my wife security. That I remember one time I did something, I know it's hard to believe, but I did something wrong parenting. And I'd gotten onto one of my girls pretty heavy, and I yelled at her, and I shouldn't have. And it made my wife upset, so upset she didn't talk to me for about a day. And so the following day, we finally had a discussion about it. And her first question was, who else knows what you did? And I said, Anthony knows. She goes, let me have his phone number. I'm going to call him. And I gave it to her. And she never did call him, because the mere fact that I told somebody let her know that I was living a life that was open, and that I knew that I did something wrong. And I asked another man to help me by saying, here's what I did. You can question me about this anytime, because I need help.
Yeah.
I need help in this area. So it actually makes you a stronger man, actually.
Yeah. I think you're breaking assumptions that we're not as strong as we think we are. And that's why we have other men around us that help us in our journey. Mm-hmm. And were you always like this, or were you that kind of a man who, I can do this on my own? What turned you, what shaped you to have this kind of accountability in your life?
Yeah, as extreme as I am now about having it, I used to be as extreme the other way of not having it. Absolutely. Thought I could do life on my own. I had a lot of trust issues growing up, where I didn't think anybody would protect me. So I had to protect myself. And
Mm.
so, which breeds a lot of manipulation, breeds a lot of lying, a lot of self-deceit, and a lot of deceiving others. So, I was very much self-reliant. I mean, I used to be I went into business when I was 20 years old because of my own business, because I
Wow.
didn't want to work for anybody else. It's real simple for me. You're not telling me what to do because I think you have an agenda and it doesn't benefit me. So that was one of the reasons I went. But here's what flipped the switch is I'd been married 13 years to my wife, and the sum total of living like self-reliant came to a head when my wife found out that I'd been unfaithful to her for the first 13 years of our marriage.
Wow.
And uh, when she found that out, uh, of course, we were divorcing. I mean, we separated, and I had to really take a really hard look at how I'd lived. And I grew up in church. I mean, I had men around me, but I didn't bring them into me. I didn't bring them into my life. I kept at a very superficial distance. I was doing social distancing before social distancing was popular. So, uh, but you know what? I had to take a real look at my life and say, this is what happens. This is the sum total of my life, that everything that I'd worked for is gone.
Mm.
My business, I couldn't work. I was such a mess. I was suicidal. I had 3 kids at the time. Um, and I'd lost all of that. And so I think that when we hear the term rock bottom all the time,
Mm.
but when a man hits it, he's got a choice. He can either lay down and, or he can turn around and take responsibility and figure out what to do different. And that's really, I chose to live differently. So I immediately surrounded myself with 5 guys. I only had 5 guys in the whole world that liked me because of what I'd done to my wife. So nobody really liked me very much. But you know what? I surrounded them with me, and I told them, if you see something in me and you don't tell me, I'll go get another friend. Because I refuse to have friends that don't want the best for me, and vice versa. I mean, but that was the moment for me,
Yeah.
and I haven't gone back to that self-reliant, thinking that I can conquer the world by myself, thinking that I can do marriage by myself, thinking I can raise kids by myself. Um, yeah, that was a big moment. That was 2004.
Wow.
So lot of stuff in that story, but that was my turning point.
How deep is accountability, JT? Because a lot of men, especially in a church environment, we might assume that being part of a Bible study group or a small group is accountability. Like in your life, how does it look like? How does accountability look like?
Uh, well, for me personally, there's a group app. I mean, my guys are just, we're constantly asking each other, I mean, it's just honestly, Dennis, I hardly ever even think about it anymore because it's such a habitual thing now.
Mm.
I just spent 2 days with my very best friend of 42 years. Um, just spent 2 days with him, and 2 hours away. So driving back and forth, just some deep conversations, just the willingness, to be vulnerable. A lot of guys don't do it because they fear that if you really knew how I thought and the things that I've done, you wouldn't like me anymore. And that is just a lie.
Yeah.
If you have a friend that rejects you because of something you're dealing with, then just go get another friend, because that's not a friend.
Yeah.
That's an acquaintance, So it really looks. I mean, I met with one of my guys this morning, breakfast, 2 hours. I mean, just catching up, because we've been in quarantine. Every week I meet with my guys, and we talk very deep things. And it's been going on now. That group's been going on since 2012.
Wow.
That's every Monday.
And it's the same guys meeting together.
The core is about 13 of us.
Okay.
And it's fluctuated. People have moved out or whatever, but man, there's a pretty consistent group that meets, and we know each other so well. I don't have to go in and say, hey, something's going on. I mean, the moment they see me, they go, what's going on with you? I mean, because we know mannerisms, we know tones, we know words. And honestly, it's just such a security for me. I mean, I don't even want to live any other way anymore. It's almost like getting wealthy and go, what was poor like, So you just don't remember, but you don't want to go back. So,
I always get asked, can you give me specific example, JD, of questions that you ask other men or other men asking you on how straight the questions are when it comes to accountability?
We are very blunt. We have, and this comes from Stephen Mansfield. I'm going to call him Mansfield from now on because that's what I call him. So just so you know, but Mansfield, he says whatever needs to be said will be said, and that's kind of a rule that we have. We don't sugarcoat anything. Now we're gracious. Now we're not. There is grace, and there's a way to ask, that's not prideful, and I don't ask in a way like I'm not dealing with something, right? So there's that grace, but we're very straightforward. I mean, it depends on what somebody has been dealing with. Like we had a guy in our group this past year that came. He had been a drug addict years ago, and was pretty hard drug addict, heroin, cocaine. He did some meth, came out of it, went to rehab, got married. Come to find out last year, he had started taking pills again. Now, this is a guy in my group. He meets with us every Monday night. But he didn't come clean with it. So now the question for him is, are you taking any pills? I mean, it's just very direct. How are you doing with your wife? How are you dealing with the stress? Those very direct questions.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what somebody. Now we always ask, are you watching something you shouldn't be watching? Because we know pornography is rampant amongst men. So that's a very typical question. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. You'll appreciate this. So every time a man comes up to the altar after church, well, when we did have church, but when they needed prayer, he'd say, I have a job interview tomorrow, so I just need prayer that goes well. And I go, okay, so well, how long have you been looking at porn? Most of the time they just drop their head. Oh man, I've been looking at it, because it's just, you're prophetic. I go, no, I'm pathetic. I just know the stats, that most men. So those hard. Again, I think, Dennis, that men want to be asked. I really do.
True.
I don't think men want to be bound. It's bound to. It's just they don't know how, and they are not going to confess. You have to be at a very place like I was to just openly confess, right? So I just think men want to be asked. They want to be free. They want to be unbound.
True.
They want to live differently. So
yeah. So JD, how do I start the process of building my band of brothers? People listening here. All right, I want to be more vulnerable. How do I start that process?
It's a great question. I get asked that a lot. It's a process. I mean, but you got to put yourself in the proximity. You can't be isolated and go, why don't I have friends? It's the proximity rule.
Wow.
And I use this little story. Everybody knows Pastor Steve Morrow, Pastor Steve's office, here in Nashville. I mean, it's very difficult to get a meeting with him. He's such a busy man. And so sometimes I would just go to the Every Nation office and walk around, and he would see me and he'd go, hey, come here, I got to ask you a question. Okay, well, I got a meeting with him. But if I hadn't have been in the proximity, that never would have happened. So you got to put yourself in a position to where, go to where, if you have if you like, I don't know, playing soccer, then get around guys that play soccer or that like soccer too, and start out that way. Just something that you have in common. Sometimes that is the struggle. Sometimes the struggle is the common ground. Well, I
Mm,
deal with that too. Well,
yeah.
let's help each other, or let's keep each other accountable, or whatever the case may be, or let's grab a hot dog and a hamburger, whatever. So it's a likeness, something you like, something you struggle with. That's a good. And then stages of life is another one. If I'm a married man, I'm gonna, and I have 5 kids, so well, let me find another married couple that's my age, and maybe we can, we have the kids in common. Or sometimes it's a workplace. There's a guy at work that's, that you see and you go, man, that's pretty, well, take him out to lunch, just see
Yeah.
what happens, So, but the big thing is proximity. You have to put yourself in a place, and you have to be a friend. In order to get a friend, you have to be a
Mm,
friend. And so you just can't sit back and wait to be asked. It's not like 5th grade, you want to play basketball and you're waiting to be picked on the team. You have to initiate sometimes. So
all right. JT, last question on this topic. What would be a best practice for your qualities? Because I've seen you, just the short conversation we had when you were in Manila, just felt some father spirit in you
yeah,
to disciple men. But what are some best practices or qualities that is needed for me to become a better disciple maker of men?
yeah. It starts with self-evaluation, self-growth, and self-awareness. If I'm, I can't. You've heard, you can't give out what you don't have.
Mm,
So I have to make sure that I have a personal growth plan, but spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, and then I have something to share and something to say. And of course, in the church world, in our church world specifically, uh, man, that purple book and that 1-to-1. I mean, those are just, they're staples in my life that help me disciple men spiritually. Because they're not some deep theological, right? We know they're just the basics, and most people don't know the basics. Same thing with intellectual reading books. We're big on reading books. I've read all yours. That sex book was awesome, by the way. Anyway, so reading, personally growing my mind so that I have something to share. Because I think I'll always look at what did Solomon ask for?
mm,
When God, I said, what? I mean, he
oh,
could
yeah.
have asked for anything, and he asked for wisdom. So I think, man, if that's what Solomon asked for, that's what I need to. That's what I want.
Yeah, that's
And
powerful.
because I do have a father's heart. I mean, I don't want to see men go through what I went through,
Mm,
because of my dad was there, but he was not there emotionally uh, for me. So I just, it flipped probably about 4 years ago. That heart of a father flipped. It was just the oddest thing. Uh, it was so odd that I talked to Pastor James, my pastor, about it. I was like, I don't know what's happening inside of me, but it's like I have this new calm and this new, just steadiness. I don't want to be way up here or down there. And since then, um, with a lot of men, I attract men because they see that. They go, man, I want that. Whatever that is that you have, that's what I want. And so that's why I've been, you know, I have the ability to disciple a lot of men.
yeah.
But it always starts with self. It always starts with self, again, self growth, awareness, and just to be willing to listen and change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any last words of encouragement to all the men who are listening to this podcast?
Man, we could talk hours on this one. Encouragement. Man, we all need encouragement these days, don't we? I encouraged my friend this morning. He's kind of going through it tough. And the thing that I said to him was this, is like, our identity is not wrapped up in a virus. It's not wrapped up in what government decides. Our destinies have not changed. This has not changed your destiny. This has not changed the purpose that God birthed in you in the womb. All it has done is it's redirected you to where you need to go. Nice. And that's my encouragement. We can't look at this situation we're in, this pandemic, this global thing, and let it identify us. This is not our identity. This is just something we're going through. That's it. Like anything else. And on the other side of this, your purpose still exists. And we all know as a Christian that part of that purpose is to introduce people to Christ. That purpose will never change. I have to continue to do that. And I can't do that when I have fear and discouragement on me, and nobody's going to listen to me, because everybody has that. So us few men that go, you know what? I'm not going to let this define me. The fact my identity has never changed. I'm still a son of God. I'm still a father in the house. I'm still a great single man. I mean, whatever your position is in life right now, nothing changes. Yeah. And we're going to get through this, and we're going to be not better, prideful better, but better because we withstood and persevered and didn't lose our way through it.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, JT. What you said about self-growth this year, I've been announcing in our podcast, 2020 is a year of training for many. While everybody's inside the house, time to train yourself, time to grow spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, even skill sets that you need to learn while we're on lockdown, so that you can look back years from now and say, 2020 was a pivotal year for me. My growth happened in 2020 when I got a lot of time to build myself up. So thank you so much for the valuable lessons that you teach us today. And I do hope and pray that you guys would have your own band of brothers just like we do. It is really critical for our survival and our success to have other men around us push us to greatness in Christ likeness. So thank you so much, JT. And if this video has blessed you guys, please like and subscribe to this channel. We'll be glad to also answer your questions. If you have any questions, please put them in the thread below, and we'll try to answer it in our future podcast. God bless you, and see you till our next episode.